Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're from. I'm running a group and been involved with this for over 3 years and researching a lot to do with this. Comes to my attention a lot of the things that we see quite often is how um, the victims of parental alienation refer to a lot of the things to do with themselves, like the trauma, the depression, the anxiety, everything that every one of you go through. This is simply factual information that anybody can see what the parents go through fighting for their children. One of the things we need to bring awareness about as well is a lot of the things that the children go through, and I know some out there do as well. But from the children's perspective, what they go through. Now, I can't say per se whether the difference with the school being involved earliest intervention is what we're talking here with our child would have made a difference regarding the bond that we have with our child. But I certainly know that it absolutely helped. One of the reasons why I guess that I pictured in my mind one of the things that needed to be identified, and that was the way the school had handled things with our child, which was really good and a positive impact for the child to feel that the father was still there. Like many of you don't have any contact with your children. However, even through what's called here in the UK, child protection, when the child protection agencies get involved, was put in there that the letter contact would be between me and the child through the school, which was really important as our child felt that she still had a connection with her father. And the outcome of that was very, very positive with the reactions the child was having with the father, myself. So that's the reason that this came about, the educational DVD, because I identified a lot of things where the schools were, in the beginning, I wouldn't be at all wrong in saying that I felt that the school was completely against me because I'm the targeted parent, and my ex had made up allegations. The social services had then joined on board with the mother with these allegations, and we all know if you've got a bad social worker in the beginning, then you've got a problem. You've got a recipe for disaster throughout the whole case. But over a period of time, and them realizing that there was this bond and this connection, and this child was not afraid of the father, which is what they seem to feel that there is. You know, well, these allegations are being made. Maybe the child is fearful, and that's exactly what they are, allegations. And I think it starts to show then that the child needs help in different areas, in different ways. The trauma that the children go through is no different than the trauma that we go through. They don't have the opportunity to go and get help or anything else. They have to deal with it themselves. However, if the schools were to have something in place, or the schools did not align with one parent or the other, and that's what I need to emphasize on this educational DVD is not about having the schools aligning with one parent or swapping from one parent over to the other parent. This educational DVD is simply to show how schools can protect themselves and how schools can protect the children by not aligning with either parent. You know, I hear a lot of the schools that talk about the well-being. They have well-being officers there and everything else now. But I also identify that there is I guess, a misdiagnosis in the way that they look at things as well, and they perceive things with your children. They don't get it. They don't get the full grasp of it. They think that in a lot of cases they see a happy child in school, but that's not necessarily so. This has been identified by many people in the past, that an happy child does not necessarily in school going through this does not necessarily mean that that child is happy beneath the surface of it. No child chooses to lose a parent, but then suddenly you have a controlling ex-partner who pushes you through the family courts, but also pushes a new kind of father in or mother in the way of the child. This is your new, this is it. This is where the pathological enmeshment starts to build, and they have time to deal with all of this while you're still trying to get into court. Family courts had stated here in the UK that it could take them up to 26 weeks to deal with a case in family courts, which has been proven to be absolute rubbish by far. And if they do deal with that, then they are missing the concept of all of this that these children are going through, and that inevitably is allowing the child abuse that's happening through the family courts, not just here in the UK, but all over the world. We have to remember that using these children as weapons, emotionally harming these children to the point where they're psychologically harming these children, is mental child abuse. And that is what it is, child abuse. As a whole, people in this country and other countries will not put up for any forms of child abuse, especially this physical and sexual ones where the signs are more ominous. But in this, the signs are not always there. You can't always see them. I know with our child, she doesn't like to stick out from her peers, but deals with things. In a recent meeting of a school teacher, one of the phrases that the school teacher had said, the first time I met the school teacher, was, "Oh, she's doing fine. She sits in the back of the room, gets her head down and goes through her books." There are reasons for concerns with our children. There are genuine reasons for concerns because our children go through far more than we as normal parents get to understand. When we can see things from their eyes, I guess, from their outlook on things, and we understand more from researching and learning more, we can see that the development of our children is being hampered along the way. And this is what we need to deal with. We need to deal with the emotional side of things that this has on children. We need the impact it has. We also need to deal with the development side, which is the developing impact this has on children. Now, people don't do the research on things for decades for the benefit of their health. They do the research on this to see how children come through life from the different ways that they're brought up, whether they're in a parent relationship with both parents, whether they split and there's another parent in place, and so on, or whether they've simply been controlled and ostracized from a parent, which can be severely damaging for a child later on in life. What we have to remember as parents, and what we need to remember as safeguarding our children as well, and for the well-being of our children, is that these parents are hell-bent on control. Thus, is the biggest part of this. If we talk about parental alienation or severing the relationship between a child and a parent, or just simply the tactics that they use, it's all about control, control and gain. They gain the ability to manipulate the social services, CASCAF, which isn't very difficult to do, or CPS, or DSS, or TELSLA. It's not very difficult to do. And that's a big letdown for our children. For an example is if a parent, an aligned parent, makes a false allegation, is serious enough to get social services involved, and social services, in their wisdom and with their probability and their right to do whatever the hell they like, so they think, align with that parent, then there is a serious cause for concern there, because that is not the case, and the only thing that's going to progress from that is further emotional and psychological harm to the child. So it actually promotes, and this is what we mean by promoting, in fact glorifying the parental alienation, the severance of a relationship between a child and a parent that we know is emotional harm, that I've seen firsthand myself, that is emotional harm, that others thankfully noticed in the case, with my case, with not my case actually, but with our child. giving them the ammunition, not the ammunition, that's the wrong word to use, giving them the, well, yeah, giving them the ammunition is the only thing that we can do. We can only give them the education. We can only give them something that will hopefully get them to take notice of, which it seems to be doing. It's a slow process because we self-fund it ourselves. I could go out and do whatever it takes to raise the money for this, to develop the films, to get the films put out there and sent out to schools and everything else, which obviously is at a cost to us. I don't know how much myself I've spent on this, going up and down the country and God knows what else, and how many people have got involved. But there are a lot of people as well that could help further, but unfortunately it's left to the likes of me and a fistful of other people that help out there. Should the schools get this here? Absolutely. Should they get it in every country? Absolutely. What we have to remember with this is an educational DVD. This educational DVD can help schools to protect their staff also. The last thing we want to be doing is a parent turning around and saying, well, you've been promoting this. You've been doing nothing but promoting the behaviours of the mother, which is the alienating behaviours, the abuse on the child, so the schools inevitably can end up being entrenched in promoting the child abuse, just like the social services can, and Kafka certainly can as well, and in fact very often do. Which leads us then to the judges who make the decisions, who take their guidance from these people, even from the schools. If a report comes in from a school and a judge sees that, this is what I mean by that everybody behind the family courts play a part in the destruction of a child's mind, development, and their whole future. And that is because of one parent that has chosen to use their child as a weapon. Using the child as a weapon in itself is child abuse. To use a weapon, child is, if we simplify this in the easiest way possible, how many people would suddenly feel that there would be an outrage if parents put their children in front of a frontline war where people are shooting bullets everywhere and hid behind the children? Because this is what we're looking at. This is what they are doing. They are hiding behind the children's. They use the children's emotions. They use the children's on all sorts of levels. I am going to discuss this at a later date on a different video that hopefully will get people to take notice of the ways that children are used. But for the moment, and I'm not talking about just the brainwashing, I'm talking about other ways that children are used. But for the moment, what I'm trying to get out there is the impact that this is having on children's lives and children as their development and their future is growing. Children that go through this are far, far, far more likely to self-harm, to commit suicide, to get involved with criminal activities, to abuse drugs, alcohol, prostitution, all sorts of things, and fail with the attachment of with another. What many people may see as a simple thing in life, the simplest things, not that nobody likes it or whatever else, but you meet your girlfriend or you meet your boyfriend, it's your first love, and you may split up and you just get on, you move on. But people from this, they can see that as a real knockback on their whole life, and it can bring forward things that they have suppressed during their life that can really impact on them later in their life from the attachment. I'm hoping along the way to cover a lot of things. I've done a lot of videos on Facebook, and I kind of get drifted away when people come into the videos. So what I'm trying to do here is bring out the videos so people can get a better understanding. It may seem non applicable to a lot of people, this. But, you know, I've seen this firsthand where that earliest intervention can make a difference. That earliest intervention can make a difference between a child turning round and saying, I don't want to see that parent anymore. Believe me, I know this. I've seen this. I have contact with my child, and I remember sitting in a child protection meeting where every single person in that protection meeting, everybody, including the police, I'd turned around and said there was an emotional impact on the child not having contact with the father, and that was supposed to have then been put immediately into play, a contact with the father, because everybody noticed it. Earliest intervention isn't 2 or 3 years down the line where people, well, we can now see that it needs to be done a lot sooner. If you ask me, if the education is out there with the schools, many children will benefit from the way that the schools can deal with these children. Many schools, many children will maybe gain the trust with the schools. And I can tell you something now, and I'm going to tell you anyway. I know that the schools had identified a lot of things. As I said earlier on in this, I felt that the school everybody was against me. I absolutely felt that everybody was against me, and I believe they were in the beginning. I thought they thought I was just a problematic dad, and I'm just a nasty, horrible person. But they slowly began to realise that there was an impact that was happening with our child, and that was because of an early intervention. That early intervention was a thing called the Derbyshire Project, which we both signed our child into, my ex and myself. However, the Derbyshire Project by itself does not work because two people can sign them in, two parents. And unfortunately, when the child starts to feel that they got the trust and they gain the trust with people and they talk freely about things, then the other parent, the aligned parent, can have no control on it, so they shut it down, and they're allowed to do that. And CASCAF actually helped my ex do that because she knew that social services wouldn't. But that's the example of just a small example of some of the things I've identified, and that is why this was desperately needed in schools. Because if every school realised that it's not necessarily that you're a bad parent, you may be frustrated, you may be feeling the anxiety, the anxiousness of trying to get your children back in your life in the fearfulness stage of everything, then I think if the schools can identify this and realise that the one parent is simply controlling the child, then it can make a massive difference with many children out there. We know that a lot of people are in indirect contact because of the words that come to CASCAF's ears. I don't want to see my mum anymore. I don't want to see my dad anymore. The earliest intervention has to be long before that, so that the child does want to see their parent. They do want to see their mum. They do want to see their father. And that is done because schools can help these children. Schools can help these children. I have absolute 110% faith if the schools get it right, they can help the children. And I don't mean talks with people who go out there and talk about this and talk about that. They need to have the basic understanding, and they need to know that aligning with the wrong parent is the wrong answer. Even if they have to go up against social services themselves, these schools, and there needs to be more say with this, the way that the schools bring things out, even if they have to go up against social services that will have already aligned with your ex, because it's a protocol. That is their protocol and the probability, and that gives them the authority that they believe to just go and destroy a child's life. Absolutely. So I guess We can't explain things to people without educating them. It's impossible to explain things. We all know that. It's impossible to explain anything to people without educating them. And I'm not talking about educating a maths teacher about maths. That's not our position. I can't teach a maths teacher about maths. I can't teach an English teacher about English. I can't teach a science teacher about science. But what we can do is get the people that know, that are in the know, that have researched, that have learned so much from all of this that's gone on over the decades. We can get them people to help them understand, help them be educated, to understand enough to know that they can seriously end up being entrenched into this. And then you have what is happening at the home ending up happening at the schools. A majority of the time, what is happening at the home is ending up in the courts, and these courts are listening to it. And that is the big problem in this country. It's a massive problem. What is happening in the court, in the home, where these children are being brainwashed, where these children are being denigrated, indoctrinated, is happening in the schools, through the in the courts, through the lawyers, through social services, through CASCAP, certainly through your exes, but more damaging through the lawyers. This is where a big problem is. As long as there is room for gain, like your exes, or room for gain, even with lawyers, then it's going to be a hard job to undo. And that's what we need to do, is educate. Educate the whole system from the bottom to the top. Judges, lawyers. We need to educate everybody. Schools are a very, very important part to play in this, and they need educating far sooner than you end up in courts or anything that you can care to imagine. They need to not be aligning and putting in reports that they think are accurate reports with your children when they're not, or things to do with your children because your exes have said so. This is important. This is probably one of the biggest steps that we have to take as parents for the well-being of our children. I know, I cannot say accurately that our child would ever have been alienated, but I can say one thing: she certainly refused to be alienated, and that was because of my persistence to make sure I kept that contact with our child, and the school for identifying and helping with that persistence. Not my, the child. They could see, people could see that it was having an emotional impact. The child, that severance of the relationship between the child and the parent was having an emotional impact on the child, our child. That was having an emotional impact, and everybody could see that. Not the risk of future, it was having the emotional impact. Help us get this out there. I'll be walking again soon. I'll put it up there. Please join on you. These are some of the ones I'm going to be doing on YouTube. People are telling me I need to do some on YouTube, so I'm here going to try some more and see if I can get it out there. So please help us help all the kids going through this. All right, thank you.